Percy Makes a Stand. Percy, the small engine, loves to work on the Fat Controller's railway. He likes to work with all of his friends, and he loves to do all sorts of jobs. But Percy liked to wish he was as important as the big engines. One morning, Percy was at Tidmouth's sheds with Gordon, Donald and Douglas. Gordon was being boastful. "I'm the most important engine on Sodor," he said. "Pulling the express is what makes me important." "Dinna talk nonsense," sniffed Donald. "We're all important." "Pulling passengers isn't the only important job," said Douglas. "I pull the post train," said Percy, "and even that's important." But Gordon wasn't listening to Percy. "You wait and see," he puffed. "I'll show you who's more important." And Gordon puffed out of Tidmouth's sheds. Percy felt sad. The twins felt sorry for him. "Take no notice of Gordon," said Donald. "He's being a boastful boiler." Just then Percy's driver arrived. "Come along, Percy," he said. "We have work to do." Percy was a little pleased, but he still felt upset. As Percy puffed out of the shed, Donald and Douglas blew their whistles encouragingly. "Remember, Percy," called Douglas, "you are as important as any other engine." Percy smiled and whistled happily. Percy arrived at Knapford Yards to collect his trucks of coal. He was to deliver them to Tidmouth Holt Station. As soon as he was coupled up to his train, Percy set off out of the yards. Percy approached the junction. His signal was red. Percy stopped. He was still feeling upset with Gordon ignoring him. "I wish I could be important too," he sighed. "You are important," smiled his driver. "You may be small, but you have a big heart." "Oh, that's very special for an engine like you," said the fireman. Percy smiled, but he didn't smile for long. Then there was a loud whistle and a loud rumbling. It was James. He was racing along the line with his passengers. He felt very pleased with himself. "Move aside a little, Percy," he teased, and he whooshed past. Dust flew everywhere, all over Percy. Percy was cross. "Slow down, James," coughed Percy. But James took no notice. Just then the signal dropped. "I'll show him," groaned Percy. "I'll show him." But as he puffed away, he wasn't at all sure how. Percy puffed through the countryside. The trucks were giggling and laughing. "Percy's at the end of his beak. He's a try playing hide and seek." Percy bumped his trucks hard. "Oh, oh, oh!" groaned the trucks. "Be quiet!" thundered Percy. Percy puffed into Tidmouth Holt Station. Mavis was there delivering Toby's trucks of sand. She could see Percy was sad. She was worried.
"What's wrong, Percy?"
she asked. "I feel like I'm not worthy of this railway," said Percy. "Gordon and James don't listen to me." He told Mavis all about Gordon and what James did to him. Mavis smiled at her friend.
"Don't be silly, Percy," she smiled. "You are worthy of this railway. You are a very good friend and a very trusting one too."
"Really?" asked Percy.
"Of course you are," said Mavis. "Don't take any notice of Gordon and James. They're just being very silly."
"Thank you, Mavis," smiled Percy. "That makes me feel much better."
"I'm glad to hear it," smiled Mavis. "Now I must go. I have trucks to shunt to the quarry."
And Mavis chugged away. As Percy was shunting his trucks into the sidings, Thomas popped by with Annie and Clarabelle. Percy blew his whistle to say hello, but Thomas didn't answer. Percy was puzzled. Why didn't he answer? He thought to himself. He blew his whistle even louder, but Thomas still didn't hear him. This made Percy cross. "I won't be ignored by any engine," he moaned. "Stop moaning," said his driver. "There's nothing we can do for the moment." So Percy set off out of the yards. As Percy puffed towards the post depot, he was thinking about what Gordon, James and Thomas had done to him. He decided something had to be done. As soon as Percy had collected his post train, he set off to make his deliveries. Percy came to a 6-track crossing. His signal was red. Percy moaned again as he stopped. "You must wait," said the timberman. "Gordon, James and Thomas have to puff through without trains." Percy was so cross his face went red and his boiler bubbled. "Enough is enough!" he shouted. "I'm going to make a stand!" So he puffed forward onto the crossing, and soon the post train was blocking the tracks. "Percy!" called the signalman. "Get out of the way!" But it was too late. Gordon, James and Thomas puffed up to the junction. They had to stop. "Get out of the way!" boomed Gordon.
"We have to get through,"
agreed James. "Move aside, dirty Percy," called Thomas. But Percy wouldn't listen, and he wouldn't move. The Fat Controller was in his office having tea and toast when he heard the news. "I'm on my way," he said. Percy huffily sat on the tracks on the crossing. His driver and fireman couldn't get him to move. The passengers from the trains were complaining. Gordon, James and Thomas were getting frustrated. Everyone shouted. "Silence!" said a voice. It was the Fat Controller. "What is going on?"
"Percy's blocking the tracks,"
moaned James. "He won't let us through," hissed Gordon. "And we can't get through," grumbled Thomas. "Percy," said the Fat Controller, "what are you playing at?"
"I'm sorry, sir," said Percy calmly, "but I feel like I'm not being noticed on this railway. None of the big engines listen to me, and even Thomas won't listen. But I must say this, sir. Engines are not really useful when they ignore their friends."
The engines all whistled loudly and
Furiously.
"Quiet!" thundered the Fat Controller. "Percy, I understand where you're coming from, but this is not the way to act. You have caused a disturbance." Percy felt sad. "I'm sorry, Percy," the Fat Controller went on. "I will have to send you to the shunting yards for a while."
"Yes, sir,"
sighed Percy sadly. So Percy's driver and fireman climbed on board, and Percy puffed off the crossing. The engines were very cross with Percy. That night, Percy puffed back to Tidmouth Sheds. When he got there, the engines were all waiting for him, and so was the Fat Controller. Gordon, James and Thomas were very cross. Percy gulped as he puffed onto the turntable. "Now, Percy," said the Fat Controller, "I need to know what the matter is. I cannot have you behaving like this." Percy sighed.
"I wanted to stand up for myself, sir," explained Percy. "I don't like being ignored, and everyone knows that engines should always listen."
He told the Fat Controller about Gordon's boasting, James's rushing past, and Thomas ignoring his greeting. The engines didn't know what to say. The Fat Controller looked at his engines. "Gordon, you're not the only important engine on Sodor," he said. "You must remember that. James, you shouldn't go that fast at a junction." "Wait, sir," said Thomas. "I didn't reply to Percy's whistle because I didn't hear him." The Fat Controller thought hard about this, then turned to Percy. "I'm sorry, Percy, but your behaviour today was very unacceptable," he said. "You must be punished. You will shunt trucks for the rest of this week, and I shall get other engines to do your work for you. If you want to stand up for yourself, you need to do it so you won't get in anyone's way."
"Yes, sir,"
said Percy. Donald, Douglas and Mavis felt sorry for Percy. As the days went by, Percy was busy shunting trucks. Thomas, James and Gordon didn't speak to Percy for a while, but soon learned that Percy just wanted to be heard. But Percy learned the biggest lesson of all. He may not be as important as he wished he could be, but he was still a very special engine and a good friend to the engines, even if he's not as big as Gordon.